scripture this morning will be in Genesis, first chapter 9, and then the beginning of 11. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "As for me, I'm establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." God said, "This is a sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remembering the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." Now we'll move ahead to 11. The whole earth had one language and the same words, and they migrated from the east. They came upon a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we shall be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth."
It's very nice to be with you this morning, and great to be on the same venue. Doug, Jude, with you all. Thank you very much. I have joined this congregation for some evening programs over recent years, but I think it's been like 20 years or so since I've been here on a Sunday morning to speak to the crowd, which just shows the good sense you have. Kind of keep me at bay over those years. But you let your guard down, and here I am. So it's very nice to be here. I hope you have been doing well in the intervening years, and maybe more importantly, doing good, which everything I hear about you says you have been. Programs here in your own community, and really reaching around the world. When we started this program for young women over in South Sudan who were looking for another step beyond the education they could get, and we were supporting them in their communities in South Sudan, they wanted to go over to Uganda for 2 more years. And it was going to cost like $750 a girl per year, and I can send a dozen young girls to elementary school for that through our Give a Girl a Chance program. I didn't see how we could do that, honestly. But these young women, I'll give them credit. They were persistent. They were like the widow and the judge. If you remember that parable of Jesus, they just kept coming back to me and to New Community Project every time we would visit, every couple of years, saying, "Thank you so much, but now here's what we really need. If we really want to get somewhere in our life, we have these dreams, and that's the only way we can see to fulfill them." Well, finally, I got through my thick skull, and on a flight back, I came up with the idea of the Second Step program, where we invite churches, youth groups, individuals, families, whoever, to take on a girl for 2 years at $750 a girl per year. And lo and behold, you guys stepped to the plate. The first year we had it going and kept 2 girls going to school on past that secondary school over into Uganda for skills training, for further education. This means a lot to them. Thank you very much. These young women, a boy or two, and all the young women, not to mention a few parents and the rest of you, for making that happen for these young people. So part of our work at New Community Project is support our neighbors. whether it's women or girls in Native communities here in the Americas and elsewhere. We've had some of you go with us to Liebrook, to the Dene Reservation there, to see the struggles that they are facing, as well as help people in our own communities find the full life that God wants for everybody. And we regularly pray, Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That sets the bar pretty high for what we're looking for here in our own communities as well as beyond here. We have people like you welcoming people from your community that are disenfranchised in one way or another into your church building, into a kind of a recuperatory process. Missy was a woman living in Harrisonburg, Virginia, living behind a dumpster in Harrisonburg, Virginia, addicted, abused, didn't know where to turn. Somehow she got connected with our Sustainable Living Center there. They gave a place for her. She had a place for them in her heart. And eventually she got herself her personal life back together, continues to live on our site. In fact, we built her a tiny house. First home she's ever had, and really had for a long time, I can put it that way, that place that she can call home. And we kind of anointed her as our director of hospitality because she knows a little bit about what it means to be welcomed. And I noticed in your front yard here, you got that sign, no matter where you're from, we're glad you're our neighbor. A Mennonite church, actually in Harrisonburg, came up with the idea for that sign. They needed somebody to design it, and Missy had some artistic skills. That's the woman who designed the sign in your front yard. We've all got these things within us. There are many layers of issues and challenges and problems overlaying many of us in our society, some certainly more than others. They just need a way to burst forward and blossom. And that's what we're trying to do with our programs around the world, and you and us in our own communities. The other part of our work, of course, is seeking healing for God's creation, because it too has been abused by our addictions. Addicted to what? I mean, you can pick your C. Cars, convenience, consumption, candy. Candy? My granddaughter, Julia, is learning about these things, including palm oil, the product in 50% of the products on the grocery store shelves, and the product that they're cutting down tropical forests around the world to produce at great cost to the global environment, to biodiversity, climate change contribution with all those greenhouse gases going up as they burn the forest to make way for the palm oil plantations, and also to orangutans, which are one of the creatures that stand in the way of these forests. And our trade, by the way, nobody is doing anything about this. Our trade agreements only protect profits and products. They do nothing for people and planets. We sign away those rights when we sign these trade agreements, international trade agreements. So it comes kind of in our court to figure out what we're going to do about some things like this. Well, anyway, my daughter, Julia's mother, only buys peanut butter made out of peanuts for her kids, my grandkids. You know, doesn't have all that other stuff in it, makes it taste good. And so I'm thinking my grandchildren are suffering. And you know, grandparents have some rights in this situation. So I'm going out to visit them a couple of springs ago, and I stop in the local Giant store, big grocery store chain out there. I cruise the peanut butter aisle. There it was, the peanut butter plus Planters. Buy one, get one free, which I, as a Brethren person, could then buy one because it was on sale. So I got a creamy and a crunchy, and I'm imagining how my grandkids are going to feel when I walk in that door, because they have complained to me about this peanut butter issue in the past. So I walk in their house, I've got the peanut butter sitting front and center right in front of me, and you should have seen their faces light up. But the first thing out of Julia's mouth was, "Pop, Pop, does it have palm oil?" The little rat. In my excitement, I'd forgotten to check, and in her excitement, she hadn't forgot to ask. Well, I got her back a couple of weeks later. She told me she bought some Skittles at the snack shop at her school. She forgot to read the ingredient list, so she got them back for her class. Yes, palm oil. So she couldn't even eat them. I was feeling so good about that. I know that seems perverse, but of course, the underlying issue may be for us, what would we give up our Skittles for? Are there things in this world where we say, beyond which we will not go? We take a stand on something. It don't have to be the things I do or the things Alan does or anybody else or your environmental committee here or whatever. You know, what are the things that deeply move us and that we feel like beyond which we cannot go? And we take some sort of stand in our own lives about these things. So, we have to be on our game. Kids and old people. We have to be on our game when we're looking to doing as we're doing to God's creation. The orangutans aren't alone. We're messing with every part of the world God so lovingly created and so foolishly put in our hands. If Is that too strong a word? Maybe we could say trustingly or in good faith, put in our hands. And Paula was showing me a book just before service started, and a line from that book that said what God was doing here. I think that word dominion, which we often take to mean dominate, don't mean that evidently if you look at the original Hebrew, wherever this word came from. To have dominion, and this book was saying to exercise skilled mastery among the creatures. Let's just say we have strayed from the original design. Actually, God might have wanted to use that first word I mentioned, the foolish word, as God looked at what had become of us and our relationship with creation and with each other. In just those first few chapters of the Bible, for goodness sake, this thing was just getting started. And God wanted to do a do-over. God wanted a reboot right there in the initial chapters of our Bible. So, where was I? There. But even in that process, a wipe the slate clean flood. Even in that process of a wipe the slate clean flood, God takes as much care to protect other living beings as he does to us as humans. In fact, my longtime friend and preeminent Church of the Brethren environmental advocate, Chantalal Buggett, who represented our denomination at global environmental conferences, but also had a really abundant garden in his backyard. He tied together the global and the local. And by the way, he passed away last summer. Some of you may have known Chantalal when he's worked with the General Board over the years. Anyway, Chantalal called God's action here in protecting the animals 2 by 2 the first Endangered Species Act. By way of comparison, we can note that today there are half as many other living creatures on the earth as when some of us in this room were as old as some of the kids in this room. Since 1970, the population of other living things with whom we share this earth has declined by 1/2, and you know the culprits. In high school classes I led out in Pennsylvania last week, they knew the culprits. They could tick them off. Forest lost, 51,000 trees a day cut in the United States just for paper towels. What happened to rags anyway? I was riding my bike to the little nature club meeting. I started a nature club at my alma mater elementary school in Blue Ridge, Virginia, called Colonial Elementary. I was riding my bike there on Wednesday, and I was going up this one hill, and I noticed something I'm always on the lookout. There was a half a roll of paper towels in the ditch. I picked them up, put them in my backpack. That should last me my lifetime, frankly. In fact, if I have good stewardship, they might show up in my will. Pollution, they said, as number 2. Oil, trash, think of all the things we're putting everywhere, frankly. As much plastic as fish in the world's oceans by 2050. They say we'll do more economic damage to the oceans than climate change. And did you see that report a couple of months ago? It's not just the fishies in the deep blue sea that are being affected by plastic. 94% of U.S. municipal tap water has plastic particles in it. We are plastic lined. We better figure plastic out before it figures us out. And as I tell high school classes, there's a Goldman Environmental Prize waiting for the one of you who figures out plastic. The third one we're naming was climate change. The creation is on the hot seat. We go up to Denali Park every summer on our learning tour. Since we've been going in the last 12 years, the wolf population has declined by half. From 100 and a couple to 50 and a couple. They say there are 2 main reasons. The state of Alaska is big into promoting big game hunting. They get a lot of money from hunters coming up and looking for trophy things, including wolves. So they've relaxed the laws in their own state lands. So if a wolf wanders out of the national park onto a state park property, it can be shot and mounted. Inside the park itself, it's not snowing as much as it used to. It's not, they have to look for a place to hold that Iditarod, for goodness sake. Anyway, it's not snowing as much in Denali National Park, and the moose and the caribou, which are the wolves' main prey in the wintertime, can now get away. When the snow is deep, advantage wolf. When the snow is not there, advantage moose and caribou. And moose population is down by half. And we talked in Sunday school about why it's important not to lose the lion populations in Africa. We say the same thing about keystone predators in the United States ecosystems. Lots of other examples. And of course, climate change ain't just hurting the creatures. It's human beings are struggling. They say by 2030, 250,000 deaths around the year from extreme weather events and drought and all that other kinds of stuff, increased disease vectors. I showed a picture from during Sunday school of the corn crop in Uganda. How it was only 5 feet. We were there in May. The corn was only 5 feet tall. It should have been 10 feet by then, they told us. They were still waiting on the March rains. And you know, it don't rain on our fields and our backyard gardens. We can get food from, I usually use Kansas as an example here, but we can get food from California, or from Mexico, or from Chile, wherever we want for now. For them, their corn don't grow, their kids don't grow. That's how this equation works. And they're not the ones causing climate change. Their carbon footprint, 0.3 or so tons per person per year, ours 20. So it's a justice issue. Just not fair what's happening to many people, not to mention the creation around the world. The kids mentioned some other factors, that ways that we're messing with God's creation. But then there was an adult at the workshop I led in the afternoon at the Bedford Church of the Brethren that put a whole different kind of spin on it, took it up to another level when she said, "We just don't seem to care." That takes it to the other stage. It's one thing to act irresponsibly, and in our society, it's hard not to act irresponsibly. As we all know, living simple life is not that simple. And you want to ride your bike somewhere? Good luck finding the bike lane. I was kind of keeping my eyes out from right over here in the car this morning. Good luck finding the bike lane. And most people aren't going to take their lives in their hands. And why should they? Even if they want to do the right thing. Some subdivisions where I was used to live in Arizona forbade you to have a clothesline. And they should make you have a clothesline in Arizona. Clothesline 20 minutes. I tell you, in the middle of the summer, they're dry. Plus, running a clothesline with this energy consumption, and they're getting a lot of energy in Arizona from coal-fired plants, only making the climate warmer, and I'm telling you, they don't want it to be any hotter in Phoenix. And when only a few states encourage recycling with deposits on cans and bottles, people aren't going to do the right thing. Recycling rate in California, 92%. Recycling rate in Texas, 8%. What's the difference? They make you pay, and they reward you. So while acting responsibly can be a challenge in a society like ours, caring about what is happening to God's creation is even a bigger question, a much deeper issue. We typically care about things with which we have some relationship. There's a bond of some kind, a deep connection, to the point that we realize that our destinies are bound up together. We do that in a marriage, we do that with parents and children, we do that in a church community. We recognize that our destinies are bound up together. The well-being of one is bound up with the well-being of other. I think that's what the Bible means by the word covenant. And that's the word God used here in our text this morning. I have made a covenant. I will never again destroy this creation by flood. So covenant, not just words on a paper, it actually means commitment. Obligation that one assigns to oneself to stay vital in this relationship, whatever it is. Because of relationship, I am committed to you and your well-being. That's just, what does that say? I wrote this stuff at 35,000 feet last night, okay? There's a little thinner up there. That's not just about bottle deposits, but that's about the reason for bottle deposits and bike lanes and clotheslines. Because we care, we act. Because we're deeply committed and connected, we respond. And then also keep from responding in ways that are harmful to our covenant partner. In any of our relationships, we want to do this, including with the one out there. It actually reminds me of a story I heard a brother man tell in a peace workshop at West Milton Church of the Brethren in Ohio. It must have been 20 years ago, I don't know, 25 years ago, when I was working with the general board. Anyway, this was, by the way, the congregation that Ted Studebaker came from. The Brethren young man who went into Brethren volunteer service in the Vietnam War, famously took a shovel instead of a gun and went to Vietnam. Anyway, this guy in that crowd that day was telling the group about how him and his buddy were avid hunters, and they joined the Army basically because they could get their hands on some cool big guns. That's kind of why they did that. And during basic training, they did really well, especially in marksmanship. They were very accurate with the weaponry at their disposal. And then came the final day of the course when medals would be awarded based on one's performance on the shooting range. So this guy was confident that he'd score high. And initially he did well, as usual. When the target was far away, more accurate than you can imagine at the distance they were shooting at. But then as the target got closer, he realized his aim was off. He wasn't doing as well, and as was at the most closest site to him, which should have been the easiest to hit, he wasn't hitting the target at all. Then he says, I realized they swapped out the bullseyes we used on previous days during the training for human figures now. And I couldn't bring myself to shoot to kill. How deep are these bonds? And what causes them to break or to never form completely? That's a question for our society right now in terms of human bonds. I think it's also a question in terms of our relationship with God's creation, which we might also rightly describe as violent. I mean, it doesn't seem quite to fit in the same way as a school shooting, but I'm telling you, when you look at what's going on with damage, and if we see this also as a relationship, a covenant between us and creation, which is being violated, and if we dare admit the damage being done to this covenant partner in the interest of taking what we want when we want it, basically. Anthropocentric, concerned only for humans. Consumocentric, concerned only for consuming. Contempocentric, thinking only of now. That's why I included the Tower Bible story in our reading this morning. It wasn't part of the stuff that Alan sent me, but it seemed to kind of fit. Human hubris. Making a name for ourselves, becoming as gods, thinking we are all that count. That's our Achilles heel. Our fatal flaw, as God sensed, will be our undoing, unless we find ways and soon to renew the covenant. How do we do this? Well, the text may provide some clues. First, God seems to have realized the damage done by the flood, and perhaps because of this, committed to never again let something happen like this. So one of the key ways of restoring our community, our covenant, I think, is to face the damage we are causing or have caused. At New Community Project, we do this by taking people out into this world to see what's being done on behalf of our economic and our interests and our way of life and our convenience and all that stuff. It's hard to go to the Ecuadorian Amazon and see the damage being done by oil drilling or the Dene Reservation in New Mexico and not think twice about our addictions to fossil fuels. And then how each of us are in some ways complicit with that. Or, locally, join a bird club and do a bird count at the local park. Most people are inside with their media. They do not realize that songbird populations have gone down 70, 80, 90% in the United States in the last 50 years. They're oblivious. Somebody got to keep the score. It's not pretty to keep the score, but somebody got to keep the score. We got a little stream run behind our little school in Blue Ridge, Virginia, where our first day of Nature Club meeting back in September, we did a stream monitor thing where you get a local guy who knows what he's doing to come in and pick up, sane stuff and looking through and see what kind of living things are in there and quality of the water. Now this is a stream in a rural area. It's not an urban place. There's no factories nearby. Severely impaired. That was the judgment. This little stream was severely impaired. Not really fit for living things. So we're going to see what we can do about that, our little club. And then, so I think having an encounter with the struggles facing God's creation can awaken us. Step one. Second thing, the Creator then the public. Never again will I destroy the earth by flood, he tweeted. In other words, God lays down the challenge. I'm doing this, and implicitly challenges us, or invites us to think about ourselves in this relationship with the creation. As we finished a meal so how do we go public with what we care about in this regard? As we finished a meal for New Community Project friends and supporters up in Illinois a couple of years ago at a local restaurant, one woman pulled a plastic container out of her woman bag. I don't know what you call these things. You guys are lucky you have to carry around all our stuff because we ain't got no man bag. Anyway, she pulled a plastic container out of her woman bag, which she was going to use to put her leftovers in. She wasn't going to resort to the styrofoam or whatever. I was amazed. And we were amazed around the table at her forethought. and her unwillingness to be another contributor to the race culture. It got all of our attention, is what I'm saying. You don't got to do much in our society to get everybody's attention because so few people are doing anything significant, or especially anything that's outside the realm of normal experience. Okay, I have to backtrack. Normal experience is to care for this creation. Weird, strange behavior is not to. Just because everybody else is doing it another way, don't mean we're the weird ones. You get my point here? We may be the normal ones if we're living in harmony with the way God wants us to treat this earth. Another woman in our network gave up driving for Lent because she realized the impact that fossil fuel production has on our foreign policy, on our climate, on our roadkill, you name it, doing damage. And I'm telling you, a lot of people sat up and noticed. Not to mention, driving contributes to our frenetic and busy lifestyles. She said it soothed her, brought her in better connection with her kids, with her backyard, with her garden, with the forest near them, because she didn't have a car that she could resort to. And I'm telling you, it gets people attention when you do something like that, even for a short time, a period of Lent. A brother in high school student over at Moundridge High School, not too far from you, was perturbed that because of budget cuts in the school budgets, they couldn't hire people to run the dishwashers anymore, and they resorted to throw away stuff in his cafeteria at his high school. He was deeply troubled by that. So he went to the school administration and said, hey, I'll wash the dishes. Well, there was some red tape, as there always is. But he was persistent, like we've talked about other people this morning. He was persistent. And finally, they granted him the privilege of washing the dishes every day for every child in that school, and he did it for the rest of the school year. You think that didn't get some people's attention? Going public. We have to go public with our normalcy, even though to everybody else it may look a little crazy. This modeling, this visible challenging of the way things are in the interest of the way things can be, not only sets a standard, not only raises the bar, gives people something else to think about and gets them thinking about their own lives and the choices that they're making, but it also frees others who may have had these same sentiments, but they had no idea anybody else was doing this. They're feeling closeted. They want to come out of the closet with the things that they care about and believe in. And then they and we find encouragement as we put these things out there. It attracts people who see what we're doing. We find some commonality and courage as we walk together. I was speaking at schools in California last fall, and usually in like a grade school I was, did 6 classes. I'm pretty much doing all the talking because I had a lot of ground to cover and showing pictures and talking. You know what I do. Anyway, so by the end of the day my throat was hoarse, raw, and I had been able to check my email all day. So I was dry on 2 accounts. So I knew there was a McDonald's between me and the place I was going to have supper with a friend at his home 2 hours later. So I stopped at the McDonald's on Mountain Avenue to get a 99-cent Diet Dr. Pepper. Okay, there's my weakness, people. 99-cent Diet Dr. Pepper, and check my email. So I'm heading into the McDonald's because I'm not going to use one of their plastic cups. I don't do that. So I got to find one. Well, there was one fortuitously. In this case, I've had to dig deeper sometimes, right on the top of the trash pile. So I grabbed that thing off, and they got hot water in McDonald's restrooms. I went back and washed it out with soap and water. We all eat off other people's plates at restaurants, don't we? Okay, thank you. So then I go up to the counter, and I say, ma'am, I just got my own cup here. Sometimes they will give you a free Dr. Pepper at that point because they think you brought back your other cup, which raises a bit of a moral issue for me, but I don't think it's the right place to discuss it. Anyway, it happened last week, actually. So I went up and paid my 99 cents or $1.03 with tax and went over to the ice machine. Well, of course, it takes energy to make ice. So I usually get it out of the tray. Now, as I'm going through this process, I'm noticing the maitre d' standing over there. This is a guy who's 50-something-year-old man who's got McDonald's cap on, got his bib on, black hair curly stringing out from under his cap, and he'll carry your food to your table. And maybe they just do that in California. Anyway, plus he'll clean up after you. So as I went to the ice machine and was doing my thing, I noticed he was watching me. You can always tell, when somebody's looking at you. So as I get finished the process, he walks on over and says, sir, you know that machine has one of those levers there. He must have known I was from Virginia, where we don't have such things. So it gave me a chance to say what I was doing and why. And he said, we all need to be thinking about the environment, just as the maitre d' at the McDonald's. He said, we all need to be thinking about the environment more. Then he gets this big grin on his face. He says to me, I wonder if them politicians in Washington ever think about the environment. He just guffaws. He just guffawed. But I'm thinking, there's a closet environmentalist. Who didn't know? Maybe anybody else. And afraid to even talk about this stuff, maybe. So we give people permission to be themselves if we're out there ourselves. And also it brings encouragement to both of us. I had a colleague. He had a colleague. He probably had a story to tell. This moment in our relationship with God's creation is really like none other. We've never been at this place in human history. There has always been a new frontier to exploit, a new resource to mine. Deeper we could go in the seas for the fish or whatever. We're running out of room to maneuver. We're butting up against humans for the first time ever. And I said to kids in high school classes, the only livable planet they think might be livable that they found in outer space is 4.3 light years away. We better leave early and pack a lunch. It reminds me, though, a little bit of the text this morning that we read, of the damage wrought by the flood and of the hubris of the human community. Those may be the only two analogies in human history for the place we are right now. So, this moment demands every ounce of our courage, our commitment, our creativity, if we hope for future generations of all living things to live long and prosper. I was told during Sunday school that some of you have been to Yosemite lately. I was in Yosemite and Sequoia last September. We were hiking and camping there. Of course, Sequoia's got the big things. Pretty impressive. We actually found a grove of sequoias that we had to ourselves for an hour because it was a 10-minute walk without a paved trail. People in the national park aren't going to go 10 minutes into the wilderness to have a grove of sequoias to yourself. Anyway, when Sequoia, those of course majestic and all that stuff, but also much of the forest looked like a war zone. Climate change, the drought California had been having for 5 years, and then the bark beetles over-multiplying because the winters are warmer. They take advantage of the situation, burrow into the trees. You should have seen the downed trees, not the sequoias yet. They're resisting for now. But the redwoods, the yellow pines, catastrophic. Standing dead trees, down dead trees. Then we go to Yosemite. Well, I've been before. A graduation gift from high school actually was a trip west for me and my family, where you could go to certain points and see Half Dome and El Capitan and Bridal Veil Falls from vistas. We took a couple of those hikes. We could see nothing through the smoke. Those fires in California, mostly human-caused. I don't mean actually the person that left a campfire burning, which is a whole other issue, but warming climate, less rainfall, invasive grass species that burn quicker than the natural grass species that happen to be there, and of course our managing of the forests over these last decades. Nature probably can take care of itself. And then they had rain last winter, not this winter, but last winter. But now, when it falls below 8,000 feet, it's not falling as snow, but as rain. So when it rains, it pours. They had to evacuate Yosemite Valley twice last summer because of flooding. What hath we wrought? I was feeling depressed. You don't go to national parks to get depressed. So about the fourth day, we went down to the Yosemite Valley. You all got to go there at some point. Along with the touristy stuff, there's also a nice visitor center. We went in to see the movie. It was a Ken Burns movie, so you know it's going to be good. And he tells the story of the park. It's centered on John Muir. And you all may know the story much better than me, but from what I picked up from the film, he was a Christian man who immigrated from Scotland in the mid-1800s, started out in Detroit, thought better of it, went west, discovered Yosemite, Sequoia, fell in love with them. Amazing displays of God's handiwork is how he would have put it. He also noticed that soon upon these parks were the miners, the loggers, the ranchers, all these people were coming in. And he knew if we didn't stop this onslaught now, it wouldn't be there for those of you and me who went there recently to see in the future. He's thinking, what can I do? Against powerful interests, politically and economically well-connected interests he was up against here. This was the Wild West back then. He got an idea, and maybe you know how this went. Invited President Teddy Roosevelt out for a 3-day camping trip in Yosemite. It warmed Roosevelt's heart, changed his mind, set him on a conservation course, the end result of which was eventually the protection of Yosemite, Sequoia, and many other national lands across our country. That same afternoon, the smoke lifted a little bit. Got a half-decent picture of Half Dome and El Capitan. I could feel my spirits lifting. When I could see what a person of conscience, commitment, faith, creativity could do, really, you might say, to change the course of history. This is where we come in. This is our end of the deal. To bravely look at what we have done and are doing to God's creation, and then rather than throw up our hands, reach out to reconnect and renew our commitment and our covenant with this creation, just as did our Maker there in Genesis 9. And then reach out to others, both those whom are disconnected, to challenge them, and those who, unbeknownst to us, may be looking for others to walk along with. Then we together, us, them, the four-legged, the two-legged, the winged, the crawling, the swimming, we head together toward that better day for all living things, including us, for the glory of God, our neighbor's good, and for the healing of all creation. Amen.
Thanks for watching this video from the First Church of the Brethren in Wichita, Kansas. If you'd like to watch another video, click the link on the right. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing on this video. And we'd love to have you join us on Sundays at 9:30 for Sunday school and 10:45 for worship. Everyone is welcome and you're invited.